So, Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, and with all this talk about JT Miller, maybe going back to the Rangers, the New Jersey Devils, apparently one of the suitors, we thought we'd reach out to Dan Rosen, who chronicles the NHL and is based in the metropolitan area there from NHL.com. Long time no see, long time no talk. How you doing, Dan?
Hey, Dan.
Doing really well, guys. Good to be on with you. This is lots to talk about. Doing well. Let's go.
Yeah, well, as you know, there's always lots to talk about here in Vancouver, Dan. But they have
there were two sides. There was the West Coast and East Coast soap operas going on. The Rangers had it for a while. Now the Canucks have it.
Yeah, and of course, the tie that binds there is JT Miller, one-time Ranger, now Vancouver Canuck. First of all, what have you made of the situation here in Vancouver watching from afar?
I can't figure out why it can't be worked out. Like that to me is the thing that I don't understand. You have a really good player who is a huge part of your team in JT Miller, and a really good player who's a huge part of your team in Elias Pettersson, right? Mediate this. Figure it out, because they're not winning a trade. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing and maybe it's far gone. Maybe it's too far gone. Again, I'm not in the room, don't have all the information, if you will, right? But that's the thing that it keeps coming back to me is like, why can't this be worked out? Because to me, it's to the betterment of the Canucks and the team in general, the organization, if they do. And a little bit, I don't want to say to the detriment if they can't, but you're going to be losing a really good player. If you're going to make this trade, you hope you get back something that really helps, but I don't know what you're going to get back, especially with the position you're in, that's going to be better than JT Miller.
What is your understanding of the interest with the Rangers?
Well, I think it's pretty high. It's interesting, right? So since this whole thing has come out, the Rangers have been playing a lot better, right? So they're 7-0-3 in their last 10 games. And somebody commented to me the other day, like, adding something into this room now could backfire. And I don't think so. Like, I think you have to look at the long range planning of this. And I can understand why there's interest. I mean, JT Miller, one, the organization knows him. Okay, so there's that. Two, he's 31. He's not 36, right? He's 31. And he gives you contract certainty. You know exactly what you're going to get. If for no other reason, it begins the retool that I think the Rangers are going to have to do in the offseason. You fast track it, you start it early. You're also not trading. You're trading from a position of strength because you know the position that the Canucks are in. And JT Miller brings something into the Rangers room that I think is needed. I mean, he is a fiery guy, sometimes moody, but that's okay, right? I mean, that's okay. Fiery, competitive guy, physical, power forward. And he would go into the room, and he knows a lot of guys in there. I mean, remember, he played with Chris Kreider. He obviously knows Vincent Trocheck, right? I mean, so you add a huge element to that room. And Mika Zibanejad is a guy who is not the same type of goal scorer that he was, but Mika Zibanejad is showcasing, again, the ability that he can really play shutdown minutes and still be a big part on your power play as well. And JT Miller would come in, and he could be one of your top two centers, and it almost relegates Mika to that third line role, but that's okay because he's playing against all the other top lines.
Yeah, if you go Zibanejad, Miller, and Trocheck down the middle, you're doing pretty good there.
You're doing all right.
Nice combination of center icemen. Jeff?
Dan, help us out here on the West Coast, because the Rangers are proof that you can pull yourself out of a tailspin. Yes. And, you mentioned the fact they're 7-0-3, so, there's all these connecting parts here, and JT's at the center of it all, but ultimately, without JT Miller, how have the Rangers gone about getting back? They're not above the playoff bar, but they're as close as they can be, a point back at Columbus and Tampa. But what's changed? Like, Adam Fox leads them in scoring during this 10-game run, so it's not one of the high-priced forwards that's gone on a heater here. What has changed for the New York Rangers?
Well, listen, right before they went into the holiday break, they played a game against the New Jersey Devils where they looked as disinterested as I have seen a hockey team. And they had 12 shots on goal, and they lost 5-0. And then they went into the holiday break, and I think pretty sure that was the game that Chris Kreider was scratched. He was scratched in one of those games, okay? They come out of it, they go to Florida and they play in Florida and Tampa. They don't win those games, but they felt better, right? Fast forward across the new year, and since then they have played much better. Why? Their 1-3-1 structure is back intact. They're not chasing all over the ice. They were chasing all over the ice. Part of the reason they were getting down early, they weren't playing well. They weren't coming out with good energy. They're coming out with good energy. They're playing well. Their 1-3-1 structure is good. They're limiting teams. They're keeping them on the outside. Igor Shesterkin had a 4-game break for an upper body injury. He's been absolutely terrific since he came back. I mean, the game last night that they played in the second period, it was counted 10 scoring chances for the Philadelphia Flyers, 17 shots on goal, and Igor Shesterkin didn't look like he was breathing heavy. I mean, it was like he was that good. I think in his last 7 starts, he's 6-0-1 with like a .945 save percentage, right? So he's been that good. Their defensive structure in front of him has been good. They've got 17 different goal scorers in this 7-0-3 stretch. So they're getting contributions. Last night against the Flyers, they went 6-1. All 6 defensemen had at least a point, right? So they're getting all that. Like I talked about with Mika Zibanejad, it seems like he's really accepted this shutdown role. He did it against Eichel. He did it against McKinnon. He continues to do it. So that's also a very big thing for them. You add it all up, this is a team that's figured it out. Like they found a way to come out of those doldrums at times where I think they were just being petulant, to be honest with you. They didn't like what happened with Barclay Gaudreau over the summer. They didn't like what was happening with Jacob Trouba. They didn't like that Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider and Trouba's names were thrown out there. But they've gotten over it. And the additions, too. Like, quietly, Will Borgen in the Kaapo Kakko trade and Eero Vakanainen in the Jacob Trouba trade, they've come in, they've filled roles, they've played minutes well, quiet, but they're not making mistakes. That's risk-free, mistake-free hockey from them.
Let's cross the river to New Jersey and the Devils, Dan, where they're not necessarily the same urgency as the Rangers. They're firmly on a playoff spot, not chasing one. And, boy, you look at that team, and JT Miller looks like he'd be more a luxury, a nice to do than a need to do. But what's your understanding of the Devils' interest in JT?
I wonder if part of the interest of the Devils is also because the Hurricanes and the Rangers have interest, right? I wonder if part of that is playing defense. Unlike the Rangers, the Devils will have to do a little cap gymnastics to make this work. The Rangers have the cap space. Remember, they freed up Trouba. That opened up room for them. They already had a little bit of room. So that's a thing where the Rangers can add him and they don't have to do all the finagling of the cap to make it work. The Devils, though, they have to look at it and say our window's right now, right? And JT Miller is a player that they don't have. I mean, he could go in there and he could play on the wing in the top 6. Or you could bump Nico Hischier down to your third-line center. And now, I mean, you think about that, right? You just mentioned Zibanejad, Trocheck, Miller. How about Jack Hughes, Miller, Nico Hischier, right?
That's big boy. That sounds like a cup team right there.
Yeah, and you think about it. Look at the Eastern Conference right now, right? The West is a beast, right? There's 5 or 6 teams in the West. I mean, they're just beastly, right? But the Eastern Conference, listen, Toronto's Toronto. There's a lot to prove there. Goaltending, can it hold up? We'll see. Florida's played a ton of hockey in the last 2 years. Have they kind of hit a wall a little bit? Tampa's not the same. Carolina's good, but listen, without JT Miller, they're not as good, right? So they need a player like that. They don't have an elite scorer. Washington has been terrific. There's a great story. Is it hold up for the length of the season? Does it hold up in the playoffs? The Devils have to be looking at it and saying, why not us? Like, why not right now? And why not right now for a long time if they add JT Miller?
Well, and I want to talk to you about Ovi and the Caps in a moment because they're here against the Canucks on Saturday. But you mentioned Carolina. And look, Carolina does things its own way. We know that. And yet they've been left wanting come playoff time for far too long now. JT Miller feels like he could be a fit there. They all need JT Miller. That's the conclusion I'm coming to here, is that they all need JT Miller.
So why is there no market for JT Miller?
Again, the way the Carolina Hurricanes do business, do you think they're at all scarred by the fact that they thought they made their big move last year at the deadline with Jake Gensel, and it didn't pan out?
Yeah,
an uncharacteristic move there too. Like they were not a big rental team. They didn't. They went off brand to make that Gensel move last year.
I don't know if they're scarred by it. Don Waddell left. Obviously, Eric Tulsky's now the GM there. There's mathematical equations that go into what they do. There has been for a while, and that's okay. I don't know if they're scarred. I think they made the right move to get Jake Gensel last year. There was no guarantees that Jake Gensel was going to sign with them, and he didn't. JT Miller, that's the thing. That's the beauty of it, right? He's not a rental. Forget about it. I mean, he's not a year. He's signed multiple years now, and the cap's going up, and you'll be able to figure it out and handle that. And I look at the Carolina Hurricanes, and it's the same issue year after year after year. They don't have the front line, put the team on his back, follow me, guys. Jake Gensel is not that. Jake Gensel's a really good player who can score a lot of goals, but he's not on no team that he's been on, Pittsburgh and now Tampa, and in between Carolina, has he been the number one guy, right? Carolina's got Aho, really good. Jarvis is good. Natchez is having a good season, although he slumped recently, but he's having a good season. But they don't have that guy. JT Miller is that guy for them. I think he is that player and can be for a couple of more years, and that would be a huge addition for them. So it makes a lot of sense why Carolina, because they're looking at it the same way I think the New Jersey Devils are, in the sense of why not us? Why not us? Why not right now? We've been knocking on the door. We got to break it down.
Got to touch them all here, Dan. So we'll come back across the river over to the Islanders. And look, for some people, the Islanders are one of the declared sellers here, although nothing gets out in a Lou Lamoriello organization. But we did see some reporting connecting them to Elias Pettersson earlier in the season. And needless to say, things are not going well for Elias Pettersson here. What's your understanding of how the Islanders are going to approach the deadline? And I know they have had sort of attendance and motivation vibe problems there in the fan base right now. So you tell me if you think they're sitting on or need to make a bigger move here.
Team's stale. The Islanders are stale right now. They do need to make a bigger move. They do need to change things up. Pettersson reuniting with Bo Horvat. I know both of those guys. You know, those guys would love that, right? So that would be a big thing for them. And I think maybe it ignites Pettersson. Listen, again, if I'm the Canucks, I don't trade either one of these guys and make it work and figure it out and all that. But that ship might have sailed by now. We don't know. So certainly I can understand the interest in Pettersson. I do. But I think more pressing right now for the New York Islanders is, what are they? And they may be the team that is borderline in the playoff race in the Eastern Conference that should be all-in sellers, right? I mean, Brock Nelson, you could get a lot for Brock Nelson, I think. Yeah. Brock Nelson he's a Swiss Army knife centerman, can play the wing center, power play, penalty kill, scores goals, big guy, shut down if you want, whatever you need. I look at teams in the West like Dallas or Minnesota. They need a Brock Nelson, right? The Islanders should trade Brock. I'm firm belief. I think Brock Nelson's a heck of a player. I don't think he's going to re-sign with the Islanders. I think the Islanders need to trade him. And to be honest, I think they should trade him before the Four Nations face-off. Because what happens if you don't? Then he goes there. What happens if he gets hurt? Now you get nothing, right? So, and let's not forget the Islanders have been bitten by this before. John Tavares got hurt in the Olympics. I think Rick DiPietro got hurt in the Olympics way back when. So anyway, I think they need to be looking at that. Kyle Palmieri's another one that they could be looking at. They've got JG Pajot's got a year left, I think, but look at that too. It's a team that's gone a little stale. And Pettersson would be a real nice addition if you can make it in season, but it also might be something you look at in the off season too. As your retool, if you will, once you figure out what's your roster going to look like at the end of this season.
All right, let's get to Ovi.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, the league, I'm sure you guys have plans on how you're going to sort of count down those final couple of goals.
Chase.
But
you think?
But you talked about mathematical equations. So He scores an empty netter last night in Seattle. He's 19 to tie, 20 to be the guy and break the record. 2 of his last 3 have come into empty netters, and people that have watched him closely since he came back from the injury say that he's not moving particularly quickly. Now, speed's never been his thing, but is there enough runway? There's 35 games to go, I guess, for the Caps here in the regular season. He needs 20 to break the record. He has slowed a little since coming back from the injury. Is there enough runway this year, or is the chase going to get pushed into next season?
I think there's enough runway this year. So Tom Delaney, who covers the Capitals, based out of Washington, our senior writer with NHL.com, based out of Washington, he's all over this. And I'm going to tell you right now, if this bleeds into next season, Tom may lose it. Okay. So he may.
It's a busy summer.
Yeah. Somebody said, I hope Ovechkin goes, I think it was John Buccigross said, I hope he gets close and falls one short. So next year it could be like Penguins Capitals in the opener and he gets it there. And Tom was like, no, absolutely not. Please no, right? So listen, I think there's enough runway left. Empty net goals count. It's funny, I was actually at the Winter Classic. I was moderating a discussion at the Fan Fest. Gretzky was in it with Darren Pang and Denny Savard, and Gretzky was talking about like all the guys always jumping for empty net goals. He goes, if not for empty net goals, Ovechkin wouldn't be that close, right? But they count. I think there's runway left. I think what you're going to see is a real fresh Alex Ovechkin coming out of the Four Nations break. Remember, he's not playing in it, right?
Yeah.
So if he gets, let's say, 4 or 5 more goals before then, right? Now you're looking at 15, 16 away, and you got a final push. Man, that would be exciting. The Capitals would be in a spot. They'd be pushing for a President's Trophy, top seed in the East, and you got a motivated Ovechkin, too, to go along with it. That'd be a heck of a thing to watch in March when we're all just watching the playoff, the snail's race for some of these bottom parts of the playoffs. I'd like to see Alex Ovechkin chasing that and get it this season for Tom's sake.
Well, it's just incredible that we're having this discussion because, 25 years ago when I started in this business, Gretzky was the untouchable across the board, right?
Yeah.
Nobody was going to get there. And needless to say, Ovechkin has had a remarkable career and can easily be described as the best goal scorer of all time. And by the end of this year, that might be minted. Dan Rosen, you're a heck of a guy and do a heck of a hit. Thank you for the time, sir. Great to catch up and all the best here going forward.
Thanks, Dan.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much for having me on.